In this lesson, we will discuss the Atma Karaka and the rest of the Chara Karakas. And Chara means the changeable. Karaka means producer. So these Karakas or these Grahas, they produce the individuality and the character of the person and also the people around them. So the first verse is Atmadika Kala Dibirna Boga Saptanam Ashtanam Va. Now there is also a second verse. It says here Atmadika Kala Dibirna Boga Saptanam Ashtamanyam Va. Now these are two different perceptions. There's two schools of thought. So the Atma is less the Rashi, the more numerous in minutes, etc., amongst the 7 or 8. And the other translation is the Atma is less the Rashi, the more numerous in minutes, etc., amongst the 7 or the different 8. Now, this is very important sutra because it tells us how to determine the Atma Karaka, which is such an important position in the birth chart, upon which the destiny of the natives and all that he is depends on. So the Atma Karaka is that which has the highest degrees in a Rashi. So this becomes the self-indicator of greatest importance. So Jaimini says that the Atma Karaka is determined from amongst the 7 or 8, and this statement has created a lot of controversy, and the results are, like I said, two schools of thought. One considers the 7-planet Sun through Saturn, and the other considers 8 factors, the Sun through Saturn plus Rahu. Now, the school that considers 8 planet counts the degrees Rahu has moved through its Rashi in the reverse due to its retrograde motion, of course. So Jaimini does not here say that Rahu's degrees are counted in the reverse, but later in the sutras, when determining the Brahma planet, he does state to count Rahu's degrees in reverse. So why doesn't he do so now in this first chapter? That raises a question upon which 8 factors to consider. So the first thing to be answered is, what are those 8 factors? Another version of the sutra gives a hint regarding the 8th factor, where it states that the Atma Karaka is taken from amongst the 7 or the different 8. Different meaning not a graha, and the 8 is actually the Lagna and not Rahu. And that's why in Kala Vedic astrology software you will see 2 rows. One is with the 7 planets and one includes the Lagna and not Rahu. So if Rahu were to be considered, then one would also have to consider Ketu, or the stronger of the 2, but no such inference is made. Thus the Lagna, being grouped into a group of 8 along with the 7 grahas, has a precedence in the Ashtaka Varga also. So to consider the Lagna as the 8 is sensible and logical, and it actually works. So then there is another controversy of whether to use 7 factors or 8. Now the author of this work, Jaimini, is thought by some to be the Rishi Jaimini. So if so, he must be faultless in his knowledge, and it makes no sense for him to give 2 schools of thought. He should rather give the simple correct instruction to use 7 or to use 8. Unless, of course, both are to be used, that in some cases 7 are to be used, in some cases 8, and in some cases both, which in our opinion is the correct assumption. In the 4th pada of the first Adhyaya chapter, we are actually instructed to use both. And then Brihat Parashahura Shastra similarly suggests using 7 or 8 karakas. Contrary to Jaimini Sutras, Brihad Parashahora Shastra states very clearly that when using 8 karakas that Rahu should be used, but we are not of the opinion that what is given in Brihad Parashahora Shastra in this context is necessarily correct due to the corruptions as stated and mentioned in the introduction of this course. So in Brihad Parashahora Shastra says, I now explain Atma Karaka, etc. from the 7 planets, Sun, Saturn, or from the 8 including Rahu. And this Rahu obviously has been added. When 2 planets have equal degrees, then Rahu is considered, then there are only 7 Karakas, others consider always 8. The planet that has the greatest degrees through the Rashi amongst the planets, Sun, etc. is known as the Atma. If the degrees are equal through the minutes, that equal through the seconds. The learned should not only consider the Atma Karaka planet from the Rashi minutes, the Karaka with the least degrees is the Antya Karaka or the smallest Karaka. And with middle degrees is the Madhya Keta or the middle planet, also known as Upaketa. Due to retrograde motion, the remainder of Rahu's degrees are counted. Now, the author or the authors, whichever schools have been editing Brihad Parashahora Shastra, places importance on not only the planet with the highest degrees, the Atma Karaka, but also that which the least degrees and that with the middlemost degrees. So the planet with the middlemost is actually termed as Upaketa or secondary mark, and so is of secondary importance following the Atma Karaka. A planet with the middlemost is only possible when 7, not 8 factors are considered. So the planet with the highest degrees, as mentioned, is the self-indicator. The planet with the lowest degrees represents the spouse. And when 7 planets are considered, the planet with the middlemost degrees represents the children. We live our lives to some degree through our spouse and children, so these karakas are signaled out as primary importance. Even if the Atma Karaka is not strong, if these 2 other karakas are well situated, the native can do well in life. So these other 2 karakas do not only represent the spouse and children, they also have a say on the success and stature of the native. The conjunction or Rashi aspect between any of those 2 or of these 3 karakas produces also a Raja Yoga. So keep that in mind. A Rashi aspect between the Atma Karaka and the planet with the lowest degrees and the middle degrees forms a Raja Yoga in the chart. Then Jaimini continues on to say, having the master of bondage and liberation. So this sutra refers to the importance of the Atma Karaka has on our lives, and it is the most important single factor in the horoscope according to Jaimini. So the well-being of the Atma Karaka determines to what extent the native is in touch with their true self. The better deposed the Atma Karaka, the happier and self-realized the native will be, regardless of the circumstances they find themselves in. An afflicted Atma Karaka indicates a native whose soul force is weak and who is therefore trampled by difficulties in life. The second pada is one of the longest in the text and deals exclusively with the Atma Karaka and the Svamsha in the Navamsha. So Brihad Parashahora Shastra places similar importance on the Atma Karaka. Lower and lower on degrees are the Chara changeable Karakas. Amongst these Karakas, the Atma Karaka is chief. Only he has a prime say on the native Dvyashtama. Like the sovereign is the most perfected of all men on earth, the head of all affairs affecting bondage and liberation. Just like by king's command, his son, ministers, etc. have a similar object in the province, Just so are the other Karakas. Dvija, only the course of the Atma Karaka results are caused. Against this course, all is contingent. The Amatya Karakas, etc., affairs desired to be done amongst men are not competently produced. If the Atma Karaka is cruel, no others can give their own good. According to the course of the king are all the ministers, etc. Dvija. If he is not inauspicious, then no others can give their own inauspicious effect. And then he continues on to say, following that is the minister or the companion, to that the brother, to that the mother, to that the father, to that the child, to that the relative, and to that the wife. So lastly, that with the least degrees is the Dara Karaka, literally the producer of the wife, but also the producer of the husband. Notice that Cha here, Tasya Dara Cha, at the end of the sutra, indicating that we have come to the end of the list of movable producers or Chara Karakas. 8 important people have been mentioned: the self, the minister, companion, siblings, mother, father, children, relatives, and spouse, and thus 8 Karakas. Then he continues on to say the Matra, mother, together with the Putra, son, as one. Traditionally, the mother and the Putra, the son, as one. And when 7 are considered, the Putra Karaka is taken as the same graha as the Amatru Karaka. Thus, one planet takes on the responsibility for producing 2 types of people. And Brihat Parashahura Shastra similarly takes the Putra Karaka along with the Matru Karaka when using the 7 Karaka scheme. So there it says, these, after listing 8 Karakas, are the changeable Karakas reckoned by the Brahmins of old. Others say the Matra Karaka and Sutta Putra Karaka are identical. If 2 planets have equal degrees, then they become the same Karaka and there is a deficiency in Karakas. Dvijotama, in this case, from the fixed Karakas, the auspicious and inauspiciousness is known. So over here it's also said in Brihat Parashahura Shastra, an important point regarding the Stira Karakas. So if 2 factors have the exact same degrees, minutes and seconds, then they both become the Karaka for the same person and there is a deficiency in a Karaka. In this case, the Stira Karaka takes the place of the missing Chara Karaka if the positions of the planets are calculated accurately and down to decimal fractions of a degree. 2 planets being in exactly the same degree is a rarity that most astrologers will never have to deal with. The important point is that if a Stira Karaka can be substituted for a Chara Karaka, they must have some strong similarities. So even though the Chara Karakas are more important for determining the character and the nature of the people in the native's life, the Naisargika Karakas, or the fixed Karakas, which we will see in the next lesson, the natural Karakas, must be similarly judged or else important details will be missed. Therefore, in many techniques given throughout this text, both the Chara and Naisargika Karakas need to be considered. Thank you for listening and participating in this course, and I will see you in the next lesson.